What's up, guys? I'm gonna let you stare at this ancient object and try to figure out what it is while I say a couple things. There are a lot of people that are truly interested in history and, want to kind of know what actually happened back in our past, and it's getting to be this really sensational thing on the internet. And I've actually had people in the comments that are all tore up inside and feel bad because we stole the land from the Tatarians. And just a little reality check, we have all kinds of objects and we have all kinds of buildings from the cultures that have came before us. And you look at objects like this and you see that they had some metalworking skills, made some pretty cool objects. It was all done by hand, blacksmithing. Just a fire and a hot fire and some metal and pound that stuff together. You find amphorae that these weren't to hold flowers in, they were to hold flour in, grains, food, beans, whatever. This one is more decorative than most. Maybe it was a flower holder, but most of these are just simple clay pots, utilitarian. They can be found at archaeological sites around the world and in shipwrecks like this one. So these are all indicative of the technology of the time, and even the ships themselves. They can see the progression of technology through the types of ships they were building. And I think sailboats are a grossly underrated technology, especially in the online study of things, because people do act like it's easy to, everybody's always talking about how it used to be a one world culture and they were all, I've never seen a 500-year-old Tatarian shipwreck with an outboard motor on it. What you do find are Spanish galleons and the like with an estimated 17 billion worth of gold. So this, goes to explain exactly what our history is. I've watched some documentary on these treasure hunters that go out looking for shipwrecks, and it's $100 million endeavor. These guys aren't playing around. All of this goes to show exactly how people were living prior to the last catastrophe. A few cycles before that, they may have been just as advanced as we are today, neon lights and everything. But archaeological objects like this go to show how people lived prior to us. Anybody figure out what this is? That, my friends, is a strigil. Or maybe strigel. It is Latin after all. Okay, just a quick recap of world history, basically, is, we had this last, okay, I'm kidding. It's a oil bottle and a scraper. So they'd go to the baths. We've all seen the Roman baths that are found everywhere. And when they get done, they'd oil themselves up and then slake off the rest with a stick, evidently. It's got the little cup shape to it, and pour it back in the bottle. We've all heard that cleanliness is next to godliness, and there was all kind of ritualistic bathing because we're some stinky creatures. Okay, so I'm gonna add on to their little timeline here and put megalithic here. Who knows if there was something before that, but we have all of the Roman era ruins that are, not all of them, but a lot of them are built on top of the foundations of even older structures. You find the same thing with the Inca down in Peru. They say there was an accounting error or something, around 500 AD, and the whole empire fell. Had nothing to do with the sun being blotted out for a few years, no harvest, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, all the stuff that I've covered. But the official history has this happening twice, right? Around 500 AD, bam, problems. And then the Dark Ages. Well, see, with the Dark Ages, there's no construction. I've shown one source that there's no archaeological evidence of any building progression between, I think it was 700 to 900 AD. That's on the official records. Nothing for 200 years. But there's no such thing as a power vacuum for very long. Somebody will swoop in and start rebuilding society, just like, today. If only a tenth of the population made it through an event, then, that tenth would start reshaping the new world. But they claim that that's what happened for 700 years. And then you had the Renaissance, a revolution of technology and ideas. And they all of a sudden found 800-year-old Roman writings, and they started, building structures again. So, long story short, it looks to me like the Middle Ages didn't happen, the Dark Ages. Okay, just wanted to get everybody up to speed in case you're new. I've done several videos on the events that happened in our official history of 1350 roughly. They say it was the Black Death, but it was all these disasters. But I've always said the dates may be off, and so who knows? This could have been two separate events, but we're talking about the melding together of European history. And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna just call these guys the Inas just because of the way things are on here. It's somebody that I get in trouble for talking about because of current affairs. But I did a video a while back about this Ina map that is supposed to be from 1421, and it shows the Americas. Notice it shows California as an island. I think it was an island prior to the catastrophes of the Middle Ages, but this is supposed to be Columbus was 1492. Anyway, this officially would be much before him. And they even mention the huge stone buildings in South America. So they're talking about the Teotihuacans and whatnot. But what I'm slowly getting to is them saying that there was a huge tsunami that wiped everything out over in that area in 1421. And it just so happens that, even in the official history, the Khmer Empire fell around that time frame. It's the same when you look at the Inca, the Cahokia culture in North America, Chaco Canyon, the Anasazi, and it's almost amazing that no anthropologist has looked and said, well, hey, we're saying that all of these cultures around the world all got wiped out 600 years ago, roughly, and what's going on here? But in the Asian countries of the Pacific over there, they were still building places like this prior to the medieval collapse. And official history says that this is going on at the same time that there's basically nothing going on in Europe. But the way I look at things, this is what was being built in Asia at the same time as the Romans over in the Mediterranean. Now, this guy wrote his book, 1421, and in that he contended that the emperor sent fleets to the Southern Ocean to determine the precise position of the star Canopus. But since this has been published, a lot of people chimed in and he got more info and says that this fleet of ships that left wasn't 100 ships, but over 1,000 ships, and 800 of them at Calicut alone were smashed up in the tsunami. And that, ships were continuously at sea. So just think about that. The Ina Empire at that time had thousands of ships at their disposal. So they would have ran everything in the Pacific easily, and it was, it could have been peaceful trade, taking care of pirates, whatever. Fishing, of course. But, we're talking about some sophisticated operations here. Of course they had logs and records of who was at sea and all of that. Who was hauling what to where. The people that had the coin to afford these ships want to know all these things. Just like today, nothing has changed. But it seems that someone's gotten rid of most of those records. They even say that they, 4 separate fleets charted the Antarctic. And now the important bit, a huge comet struck the ocean less than 100 miles from the fleets, incinerating many ships and hurling the blazing wrecks onto New Zealand, South Island, east coast of Australia. And evidently they found them all over the Pacific and the Indian. So this would have devastated coastlines for a long ways, and we'll look at that on a map here in a minute. But I'm telling you guys, the comets are what has happened in the big ones in the past. I've got all kinds of evidence of this. They say it appears 26 times as bright as the sun because, yeah, they know these things, evidently. And a screaming noise of 100 decibels. Now, I just never mind their measurements there. The screaming noise. I don't feel like trying to find it right now, but there's an old woodcut from the 1300s showing a shooting star with a trumpet signifying the noise that it makes. Because, just think of the noise a jet makes passing by with the Doppler effect, only 1,000 times louder, just busting eardrums loud. And the part about horrific burns, this is something that Hollywood doesn't portray, but there's melted rocks all around comet impact sites, meaning that it literally heated everything around. You can't, it's hard to flash heat something to the point of melting. That is super hot. Usually when we melt metals and things, we slowly heat it up, but an event that can happen in an instant and liquefy rock is super hot. So this would just vaporize the moisture out of everything. The high heat would cause a temporary high atmospheric pressure zone, and then it would implode on itself, causing 400-mile-an-hour winds. So the author of this book goes through and lists all of these academics, and the official academics of this Goff attributes coastal abandonment in New Zealand at 1500 to an earthquake. So everybody already knows that a tsunami did happen. They've got the evidence of it everywhere. There's Stewart Island, 220 meters above sea level. They have beach sand and probably seashells and everything. And in eastern Australia, there's mega tsunami deposits with a maximum runoff of over 130 meters. In the carbon-14, this is the only time I've ever agreed with a carbon-14 dating, they peg it at 1500 AD. So all of the official scientists out there agree that, yes, there was a mega tsunami around 500, 600 years ago in this area. They just all say that it was a tsunami created from an earthquake and not a comet. Now, they say this happened off the coast of Stewart Island, New Zealand. So you can see that Australia kind of blocks the rest of Asia if you just picture throwing a big rock in a lake right there. But I would think that some of that energy would bend around and, maybe still have small ones. But let's look in the other direction, and you see that it's pretty much wide open all the way over to South America and the west coast of North America. We'll talk about them in another video because, you just happen to have one culture disappear and another culture pop up right in that time frame in all these areas. They say that a tsunami is able to cross entire oceans without great loss of energy. The 2004 Indian Ocean one off the coast of Sumatra, and then the effects of it were all along the coast of Sri Lanka and India. And I've said for a long time that the west coast of North and South America just looks like it got wiped out by a giant wave. South America, that's mountain ranges that separate, the Amazon from western South America. And you just so happen to have cultures like the Inca going up on top of mountains 10,000 feet up in the air and building their cities. I hear a lot of people say that these are old world cities, and there's no megalithic anything at Machu Picchu and all these other sites that are on top of mountains. Those are all different sites like Teotihuacan and Pumapunku. They're all high elevation, but Machu Picchu is ridiculously up on top of a mountain. And they were up there because they were scared of the water. They've even got legends of this that I'll share later. And in North America, they must have seen the stuff up in the sky and been afraid of water because they built all their dwellings, their survival shelters. That's all these are, survivor shelters after a catastrophe. And I've heard a lot of people talk about these that have obviously never been there. Guys, this is big, huge mountains. Like, you can stand on a cliff near this and it's about 2,000 feet down below to the kind of mountain valley floor. And then on top of that, it's these steep mountain canyons that you're going through, and you got to climb like 40, 50 feet up to get inside of there. I mean, they were very scared. This was like the most secure location, bug out location you could ever think of. Very easily defensible. You can just stand up there and drop rocks on people. But, you know, I've heard people say, oh, well, they grew these and this and that. And you just go there and you'll see that this is natural stone all over the place. And then, you know, there's nothing spectacular about what they've built here. It's just they stacked stones. They made some grain storage warehouses and a place to sleep that was high and dry, and nothing from up above was going to donk them on the head. Anyway, just a quick recap. Roughly in the 1300s, we've got pretty much all of Europe getting wiped out. And also China was supposed to have had a bunch of bad stuff happen at that time too. And then in the 1400 era, you now have evidence of a comet impacting in the ocean, giant tsunami. And you just so happen to have cultures all around the Pacific Ocean getting wiped out at that time. Speaking of cultures getting wiped out, we all see what they're trying to do right now with the reset and all of that. And they're currently collapsing the financial system. I mean, I know this is a slow motion train wreck. It's going to take a while to happen. I'd say we're going to be seeing some pretty major effects in this world by this winter. But go out and have some fun this weekend, guys, because the next couple of years, we could very likely be looking back to this time thinking about, oh, that was the good times. So act like it. Things are a little more expensive right now, but I mean, guys, they want the internal combustion engine gone by 2030. I mean, this all started back with Cash for Clunkers. That was a big setup. Anyway, I happen to really like internal combustion engines. It's actually a big part of the freedom that we enjoy in our modern world. And I hope when everybody's celebrating independence this weekend, you realize that it does come at a cost. And it's a bill that nobody's paid in a long time, which has given rise to not so friendly actors taking advantage of us. So we'll see how all this plays out. But I'm going to go out, rip up some roads, and have some fun. I hope you guys do something you enjoy as well. Static out.